My name is John Leal. I'm the Director of Government Relations. I do want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Restrooms are to my left, your right. Beverages are just outside in the lobby area for your convenience. Of course, the exit ways as you came in behind us and to your right in case of emergency. I do want to pause for a moment and invite Fred Bonnywell, who's online, to make opening comments and our safety message.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. It's nice to be here connected. Remember that organizational resiliency is predicated upon our ability to be individually resilient. And particularly over the next week, we're going to see escalated ambient temperatures up to the mid-90s and above. So all of us need to take heed of this warning and ensure that we're doing everything to make sure we're refreshed, we're taking plenty of liquids, we're watching our diet. Remember, alcohol and caffeine can have an adverse effect on our ability to be resilient in high heat temperatures. So that's my safety message for today. Remember, zero harm through safety. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Fred, so much. I want to turn it over to Adrian Garcia to go over the protocol for questions and comments over Webex.
Yes, sir. Thank you, John, and good morning. My name is Adrian Garcia. Just like John mentioned, I'm the digital comms specialist with CPS Energy's Corp Comm and Marketing. I just want a little bit of kind of housekeeping rules on Webex and the virtual side. If you do have a question that you'd like to ask the panelists here in-house at the headquarters, please feel free to send myself or just everyone. Raise your hand. You have the raise hand option. But you can also ping myself or any other co-hosts with a chat message there as well. Just a little quick update as well. If you want to see the video feed that's being displayed, just go ahead and click on Layout found on your top right-hand screen and uncheck where it says Show Participants Without Video. This will show only the video that's being displayed and not the other panelists that have joined today's meeting. And with that, I will hand it back over to Mr. John.
Thank you, Adrian. And it's certainly my pleasure to welcome Carolyn Shellman to offer our opening comments. Carolyn?
Thank you, John. I'm really glad to be here. This is going to be the shortest welcome that you ever have, but John's group, the government relations group, works for me, and if you all have been following the Texas legislature like all of us have, you know that the areas that you all deal with are front and center of what we've got to deal with in Texas to make our economy thrive and to make all of our communities improve. And it's just been such a wonderful thing for me, the time I've been here, to work with all of you, and I look forward to hearing what you all are going to be doing with respect to resiliency. We started thinking about things like battery storage in 2019, before that really, but we have been, that whole conversation has come down into everybody's homes. Everybody's thinking about what can they do in their home, their garage, whatever it is to store energy, to make it more resilient. And I think you all are going to be leading that charge with all your communities. How can you make not only your city facilities resilient, but help make everything work for all your community residents too. So enjoy this conversation today. There's going to be some good talk about the resiliency RFP that we're dealing with, and some discussion about backup generation, which is front and center of what I know you all are thinking about, and we have been too. So enjoy the conversation, and I'll be part of it, watching it on the Webex. So thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
And thank you for all that you've done for our organization, our group in local government and regulatory affairs, and the company. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Carolyn.
I would like to introduce Jonathan Tijerina, our Senior Director of Business and Economic Development. When we polled our group, one of the things that you asked for was a little bit more information on our resiliency RFP. So I've asked Jonathan to come down and talk a little bit about it. So tell me, what are we proposing?
Sure. So thanks, John. And first and foremost, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you here on person and via the Webex. I must admit, it's very nice to see people, to the point that I got a haircut and got new glasses for today, so it's always fun. John, I appreciate the question. So as you all know, from a CPS Energy standpoint, we've been on this flexible path now going back to 2017. And if you recall, when we were first talking about the flexible path, it was really around our products and services and the ability to offer our customers in their suburban cities optionality or product choicing when it came to various initiatives. The one you're probably most common with is the work that's been done with the AMI meters and the ability to put in demand response type solutions at a residential, commercial, small, medium business type solution. On the residential side, thermostats, commercial side, more robust demand response type programs. And so realizing that resiliency was always on one of the pillars around the flexible path, we've been having conversations now going back for probably a year and a half around how and what a resiliency type product would look like. And so obviously fast forward to the winter storms, we saw the need to go to market a little quicker than probably we were thinking. But in the high level summary, what we're going to be going to market for is to look at options that would include solutions, more specifically customized solutions for commercial and residential type customers. And so just for background, my group is the Business and Economic Development team. Our primary goal as a business unit with the organization is really to support our various business units in developing these opportunities to bring things to market. And we have a close partnership with like Rudy Garza's team and the Products and Services team that ultimately is the team that implements and monitors the programs. We have a lot of connection right now with Paul Barham and the Grid Resiliency and Optimization team, because ultimately whatever we end up developing will need to be able to complement itself or kind of plug and play, if you will, into the various business units as well.
Where do you think that might, I mean, you talked high level, but with regard to commercial facilities or residential facilities, and I know Rudy will talk about it a little bit more, but what's the big level thinking?
Sure. So what we're seeing right now, what we've been able to do from like a market intelligence perspective is it's a couple of things, right? It's products probably that are focused more with some type of a natural gas type solution, right? So the traditional backup generator and what that looks like. But it's also going maybe a step further and looking at mini microgrids and seeing what are the possibilities of actually hardening rather communities, neighborhoods, or specific businesses. And so right now, what we're curious to see obviously is just what the pricing is going to look like, what type of respondents we get, and really from a timeline perspective, how quickly could we actually go to market with some of these type of solutions?
What's the timeline?
Great question. So right now, our goal is to go out to market within the next 30 to 45 days. We're in the process right now of fine-tuning the RFP itself from a documentation standpoint. As you are all familiar with, right, anytime you do an RFP, there's lots of I's to dot and T's to cross, so we want to make sure we get it right. And in full transparency, we're also using this as an opportunity to hopefully gain some additional market intelligence. So very similar to like the Flex Step RFP that went out a couple months ago, we'll not only be looking for the tried and true type solutions, which are the ones that we're more common with, but we'll also be seeking opportunities to see things that are kind of, for lack of a better words, outside of the box type solutions. And so we're curious to see from a technology innovation standpoint, what additional type of options we may be able to get.
And technology's changing. Like we saw with our Flex Power Bundle, there are new technologies that are emerging that could be very viable. So the expectation is not just for Flex Step, but the RFP for resiliency is that we're going to see that same thing.
That's right, John. Right. So, we can never say it enough, but right, flexibilities and options are always going to be at the forefront. And so we want to be able to ensure that we're not only looking at the traditional type of technology solutions, but also just what's maybe on the cusp of being there, and then finding the right partners to figure out where we can sync up on those things.
I do want to remind folks, please ask questions. We've got microphones that are available for those that are in the crowd and also online as well, and the team is monitoring those comments now. So you said 30 to 40 days before we go to market. Mm-hmm. I presume that's a 60 to 90 day window, and then a review process after that.
Yeah, I think it'll be closer to a 60-day window. The good news that I will say is, especially from an established perspective, we are getting lots of inquiries already around, what and how they can participate. So, I think from an awareness standpoint, being able to talk in forums like this and in other additional public-facing forums, it's helping already with the awareness piece, which I think will play a big piece in getting the information to us. The other thing I'll mention is, and I think Paula mentioned it at the first Resiliency check-in that you all had a couple weeks ago, we're also having conversations with the San Antonio Economic Development Foundation. And as many of y'all know, they're really tasked with spearheading those efforts here locally, but they also have great partnerships with your cities and your communities in figuring out how we can attract businesses. And I will say from an economic development standpoint, there's also a lot of interest around how this plays. And where I'm going with that is that we've seen an influx of potential customers looking at our surrounding area to come into the community even after the storms that we experienced in February. And so with those types of conversations, when we're going into the deep dive, the resiliency products and services solutions are also coming up. So I think just naturally having businesses also being attracted to the community are also bringing their partners to the forefront and are helping with some of that awareness that will hopefully lead to a pretty wide range of solutions.
Yeah, for every type of customer.
That's right.
We want to make sure that both large and small, residential, despite income, that products and services are available for all our community. We do have a question from Mayor Dennis.
I do. Thank you so much, Jonathan. My question is, with your RFP, is it going to go outside of Texas, outside of the country? Is it?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Let's rephrase the question for those that are online that
Sure.
might not have heard it. Question is, will the RFP be wider and more expansive than just Texas?
Yeah, I imagine it will, Mayor Dennis. Some of the companies that we're already talking to have international or coming from an international perspective. So yes, I have every reason to believe it will be another international RFP looking for solutions. You're welcome.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Scott.
I guess then at some point, then once this resiliency options are explored by you guys, then you will offer them to the cities to determine what appetite some of the cities would have for participating in these, not only on city properties, but also programs to offer our residents and businesses also.
Let's make sure we restate the question again for those that are online. Once the products and services are offered, we would make the cities aware, will we make the cities aware that they're available not just for city facilities, but neighborhoods in their communities?
Yeah, great question, and the answer is yes. That's exactly how we anticipate it, right? So just like anything else, we want to make sure that there's an awareness piece to it, so there'll be probably some marketing efforts that go out, some outreach. But yes, the idea would be is that we would want it to be a turnkey solution that we could offer to our partners, our suburban city partners and other partners, and then from there work our way through the layers, rather through businesses specifically or to the residential side specifically. That's right.
Any other questions? Well, I certainly appreciate Jonathan's time and your questions. Jonathan's also speaking at another event here shortly, so we're going to excuse him.
That's right.
And we're going to take a moment to re-mic a few folks, and I'll invite Rudy Garza, Angela Rodriguez, and Al Rodriguez to the front for miking. But while I do, I want to make sure we cover a couple of follow-ups.
Hey, John, real quick, if I could just mention.
Oh, please.
As I mentioned, my team does work quite often with your economic development team members or your respectable agencies that help support your groups. But at any time, if you have a question for my group or for myself, you can obviously work through John. But if not, we'll make sure you have my contact information as well. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. While we're transitioning, I do want to make comment about a couple of items that we talked about at our last summit. Kim Turner mentioned the possible use of the ARP, American Rescue Plan monies for backup for generators. And we did a little research. It is high level, but utilizing our contacts at the APPA, American Public Power Association, and I would also suggest that you take this and run it by your legal counsel for your respective cities. But there are 4 different type of approved uses for the ARP money. Items C and D. So the first 2 clearly do not apply. The 4th could apply if backup generators were being used as part of a water, sewer, or broadband project. And then D. That was D. Most likely C, the 3rd provision, of government services to the extent of revenue loss under the interim final rule released by the Treasury. So there are guidelines by the Treasury that we could certainly make sure that you get as our cities so that we can make sure that if funds are available and continue to be made available, that your cities can use them as well. So we'll go ahead and come up and get mic'd up. Al, if you'll take the seat by the window. And again, if you have questions online, please let us know. So one of the things that we were able to poll your contacts, our partners, was backup generators, kind of the pros and cons of each type, right-sizing your system, and what might be the incentives and work widths. And so I'd like to introduce Rudy Garza. He has a number of programs underneath his purview. One of the things is he's got customer engineering and product innovation and products. I got that wrong. Products and innovation.
Products and services.
And Angela Rodriguez is one of our air quality specialists here within our organization. And then getting mic'd up right now is a former CAC, Citizens Advisory Committee Chair, a current member of the Rates Advisory Committee, a trusted colleague of many of us, Al Rodriguez. Al is the owner of A Marketing and Service Company, and we're asking for his expertise in this discussion as he works very much with new build on UPS systems for commercial buildings, backup generators, and the even retrofitting. And so he'll be able to offer kind of his insight and some challenges, and he has some illustrations that we can show as well. So I will start with pros and cons, and probably the biggest thing that we would have to think about is service delivery to you. And so a couple things, and I'll look at Rudy. Diesel's easy to get. Natural gas is a little bit harder to construct. We are limited in some areas for our service. But the essential part is, like we did with Universal City, is working with our customer engineering group to ensure that safety is at forefront.
Sure.
It may be expensive, but look for ways that we can work with customers when they're building these type of facilities.
Right.
At a Karma's group.
Right. So first off, let me just welcome everybody. I think a lot of you have been to this building already for the first time at the last meeting. Glad to have you back, and we hope that you come see us frequently when the opportunity presents itself. So as always, I just want to start off by thanking our suburban cities for being such great partners and always being willing to get in there and get in the trenches with us to try to help solve problems and serve your constituents and our customers. As Jonathan said earlier, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and the questions that you're asking are questions that quite frankly a lot of our customers are asking us right now. And we've got probably, I was asking my team some questions this morning about how many customers already have backup generation for various reasons, and we probably have over hundreds of customers that have diesel, natural gas, whatever the technology might be, because they just can't go down. Data centers, hospitals, military. There's already critical infrastructure. And critical is in the eye of the beholder, right? It's critical to you because of what it means for your own operations. And so all of those happen, in conjunction with the work that we do in our customer design and delivery group. When we have a customer that wants to install a new piece of infrastructure that's going to provide them with the resiliency they feel they need, we do an interconnection agreement with them to make sure we know it's there, so that we can keep our crews safe more than anything. When in an outage, that generation kicks on and it can put voltage back onto our grid. And so it's important that we know that it's out there, and there have been instances where customers have had an issue on their side, and knowing that what's out there and what the technology is, it gives our experts a chance to go out and help if there's a situation where we may need to help a customer try to figure out what's going on. Right now, we've got a lot of customers, as I said, who are having this conversation. We've had everybody. It's widely known the work that HEB has done. There are certainly environmental issues with a lot of the work going on in our community with respect to climate action, about whether or not you put diesel, natural gas, or whatever the technology might be. When I think about the categories of products that we're starting to think about, it really is a very broad and diverse set of categories that my team is starting to coalesce around. Critical services is number one. The work that you're doing, the work we're doing with SAWS, the work that we're going to start doing with the airport. There's a lot of critical infrastructure out there that we have to create kind of a category for and go out and prioritize so that we can make sure that we address this in the short term, so that we don't experience what we experienced going forward again. Our large commercial customers, there's a lot of large commercial customers who are starting to have conversations of their own with specific companies about technology. So interacting with them and knowing what they have in mind and how we can be helpful. Our small commercial customers, 80% of our business in San Antonio, actually 90% of our business in San Antonio is small business. So, there's a broad category. I got, when you think about critical services such as all those companies, small businesses out there that service hospitals, for instance. You may have a hospital that's up and running fine because they have backup generation, but they can't get towels or they can't get bedding or they can't get food or whatever the case might be. And so we're starting to have conversations about all those small businesses that support our critical infrastructure as well. And then residential. We got a lot of residential customers, and what it means for residential is a little bit different. Are you a critical care customer that has some life-sustaining equipment in your house that we need to know about? There's a process that we have, and there's a lot of work that y'all can do in your own communities to make sure that customers in your communities have identified themselves. It just takes a form. Real easy. Jesse Hernandez, who y'all know, who's in the room, his team manages that process for us. But just getting information out to your residents about services that we already have in play today and making sure that their information is updated in our system, that's a resiliency strategy so that when we put information out into the community, they get it. They tell us how they want to be communicated with. All of those are resiliency strategies that factor into the conversation that we're having here today.
Rudy, one of the things you mentioned, and I'll turn to Angela for a little bit of this information is, did I lose Mike again, Art? Okay, there it is. You said one of the difficulties are emissions. Talk to us about the emission differences between diesel and natural gas.
Sure. And hi, everybody. I'm Angela Rodriguez. And I'll just start by saying John told me it was business casual, but I told him I'm wearing a dress because it's the first time out of the house, like in a year. I'm dressing up. But when you're talking about emissions and backup generators, one of the important things to note, not so much for residential, but for commercial and industrial purposes, is that the TCEQ and the EPA do have really specific emission rates and limitations, whether it's for emergency use or non-emergency use. And so, for example, some generators that are specifically labeled emergency, they have hours per year limits on how much you can run them. And they can really only be used during like a weather-related event, a grid emergency, a time when your main power supply is just not available. If you get a generator that's labeled non-emergency, you can run it for demand response or in other situations, but those usually have some stricter limitations on them since you're going to be running them more hours in a year and possibly making more emissions. From an air emissions perspective, I will say that diesel has made huge steps in being lower emissions. There's ultra-low sulfur diesel, so it has a lower SO2 rate and lower particulate matter, that black puff you often see that comes out from a diesel engine. There's been a lot of strides in reducing those emissions. It's still more than natural gas, but better than it used to be. In respect to NOx, or nitrogen oxides, diesel usually does have a higher emission rate for NOx than natural gas in most cases. The only reason I say in most cases is some of the older natural gas generators that have lost some of their efficiency might actually make more NOx than a brand new off-the-shelf diesel generator that's the highest efficiency you can get. So when you're looking to purchase one, you want to make sure you're getting the best and newest technology available. And I did want to mention one of the reasons we care about NOx in the Bexar County area is nitrogen oxides and VOCs are two of the constituents that contribute to ozone, and Bexar County is in a non-attainment for ozone. So paying attention to how much NOx we're putting into the air is extremely important. One of the other things I did want to mention about diesel fuel is nice because you have it in a tank right there. You can measure it. But you have to think about times when we are thinking about climate and weather and changes that we've seen in times where maybe roads are flooded due to rain or roads are icy. And if you run out of diesel, it's harder to get it in. So natural gas has the advantage of being, piped directly there. And from an emissions perspective, if you do want to look at liquefied fuels, even newer technologies are out there now, like biodiesel, which has a good climate and sustainability footprint because it's normally made from waste products, and any time that you can use a waste product in a positive, more purposeful way than just disposing of it, that's a good thing. And so the emissions will really depend on your particular application and how you plan to run that generator. And so those are just some of the things you'll need to think about.
You made mention of if someone buys a used generator, natural gas generator, would you estimate the age of that? Is it 5 years plus, 15 years plus?
Yeah, I think really from 2010 on are some of the better emissions. Anything that's older, you might want to not get because the emissions might be worse.
Thank you. I wanted to turn to Al. Al, you've been in this industry since 1986. What have you seen with regard to resiliency on a commercial level as well as residential?
The residential market is probably the newest market out there. On the commercial, as data centers and the newer electronics and the new automation becomes more and more into the workforce, it becomes a bigger deal. You have lost man hours, which everybody's concerned with. So as far as generators go, there was a time in 84, 85, 86, when I was heavily involved with the broadcast industry, they were the only ones that had generators.
Hold on, Al. Hey, Art, let's switch over to the handhelds. You got it? I'm going to take this off. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Al, why don't you start that over? Resiliency started for commercial facilities when?
When I got involved with it, it was in the early to late 70s, and really it was with the broadcast industry. I've been a member of the Society of Broadcast Engineers since '73, and they're the only ones that had it because they were the only ones that were concerned with loss of income, and that's what it came down to. It was a dollar decision. If they couldn't run a commercial, they weren't getting paid, and so it was 30 seconds of puff of air that they were concerned with, that they wanted to make sure to get their income, and really even today, it comes down to a dollar decision. What are we going to do? There are some companies back then and now that they will have a small UPS, an uninterruptible battery operated power supply, and when they calculate their runtime as to how much battery life do we need, it's going to be, well, how long does it take to down our system? So that there are some companies that will say, okay, fine, we've got this many employees. If the power goes off, we're just going to shut the system down, and everybody's going to sit down and wait till the power comes back on. Go home for the day, whatever the case is. Again, a dollar decision. So in running the UPS systems of today, you're going to want to determine what is critical to your need. In homes, the newest market, if you office from home, it's going to be important. In home, if you have a fully automated home, it's going to be real important. You're going to go back and reset everything. And a lot of times is that, what did I lose when everything went down because of loss of power, what did I lose and how much can I bring back?
So for our cities and our community partners that are listening, what it boils down to is time and right sizing. It's from the moment of service interruption to the moment you can customers can either power down or turn to another alternative like a generator.
Exactly.
What is a typical flow of that, and where have you seen the applicability in the industry?
The flow would be, let's say, from the utility power coming into a building, you're going to have an automatic transfer switch. I'm going to call it an AB switch, where your A input is going to be utility, your B could be a UPS, or it could be a generator. The generator is going to give you a longer life. So a lot of times on that automatic transfer switch, you're going to have utility and a generator. What type of generator? That's going to be up to the other Rodriguez to help you decide. And then
The smarter Rodriguez.
the smarter one, yes. I default to that, yes. Then from there, because that particular AB switch has to totally disconnect from utility before it connects to the generator, you're going to have a small gap of zero power. So when the generator kicks in, you're going to have a large spike coming in, and in order to protect you from that spike, you're going to need surge protection devices, and then you're going to need a UPS to help you ride through those seconds that it took the generator to rev up and make that whole switch. And so if you do not have a generator, you've got a computer system that's operating your business. If it's going to take you 5 minutes to turn it off, once the power goes off, it drops all the computers offline, and then the mainframe starts to shut down in a controlled way. The danger there is anybody who runs a large computer system is like, will it come back up? So you want to avoid that at all costs. And all cost is how big a UPS do we get? How long a runtime do we have? Is that UPS backed up by a generator? And is that generator backed up by as much as, and we've seen it in rare cases here in San Antonio, I am familiar with one location that has 2 CPS feeds from 2 different substations, because that to me is true redundancy, because in case one CPS station goes down, hopefully the other substation will still be up and they can feed from there.
So it sounds like we're talking about 2 different kind of customers: new builds, which many of our cities are doing, but then some of our cities are existing customers, and it's more of a retrofit. So it goes back to both working with Rudy's group and Paul's group on the engineering side of it. What exactly does the customer need? And then going back to you have done quite a few, not just new buildings, but many more retrofits in an existing site.
Yes, and in the newest retrofit market being the residential market, right now the way residences are built electrically is you've got your meter, and then hardwired right from your meter, you go to the first service panel that's usually outside the house, and then that panel outside feeds 1 or 2 or 3 panels inside the house. Well, in order to put any type of generator there or an alternate power source, you've got to almost have to rebuild that service entrance. You're going to come into your meter, coming out of your meter, you're going to go to this automatic transfer switch that I'm calling an AB switch that's going to choose whether you want to go to utility or whether you want to go to your backup generator that you've got.
So A on the utility side and B for the backup generator.
Yes. And there again, there's several levels depending on, even inside your house, you may have a UPS that runs the main computer for the household and your router and your cable system, because we can't live without that.
So Rudy, that ties into a little bit of what you talked about, what we're looking at for residential customers that truly desire resiliency. So that is a product that you're working on.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like mine is working. So yes, certainly residential, we've got demand response, energy efficiency programs that everybody can take advantage of today. That's just lowering your overall kind of per square foot usage, within your facility, installing energy management systems, doing the things that you normally do to lower your costs. Those are all good things, and I will tell you, in this February event, energy efficiency showed up. We believe that, our messaging to our customers that they had to take action finally showed up, towards the end of that event. And when we were thinking it was going to be, maybe Friday before we actually saw, the system come back to normal, it was actually Thursday evening around midnight when it happened, because, we had close to 65 of our largest commercial customers, including the military, which was for the first time that they ever, pulled their medical facilities offline. We got about 245 megawatts of demand response where they just completely shut down and moved to backup power. I was talking to a residential customer, friend of mine, who put a full resiliency system in their home, years ago. Cost them $20,000 to have a generator, to have the fuel they needed, to have a system that switched over automatically. The minute they see a drop in voltage, their system automatically kicks on. Not every residential customer can afford to do that, but for those who can, we got to help them, educate them on what that looks like, right? So we got a lot of work to do. As I said before, just educating customers on what's available. The work that we've done at CPS Energy to, the Project BEST, the work we've done with Southwest Research Institute to pair a solar system with a battery to understand how those work together has been hugely helpful. And you can scale those up to do full utility scale solar and batteries. You can scale those down for a specific installation for your pump station at your wastewater facility, or whatever the case might be. My hope is that the efforts we've done to educate ourselves will start to translate into us being able to educate our customers as well. And so the work we're doing right now is really, we've got some really good experience with a company called EROC that provides a technology that's natural gas based. There's a third party, we figured out what that product offering looks like so that we can replicate that for those customers who are interested in that setup. But there's going to be new constructs that our customers are going to bring to us saying, hey, can you do this? And so we've got to really turn over every rock that's out there to figure out, what are those product offerings going to look like? Because while CPS Energy certainly wants to be the energy expert that you want us to be, our customers are going to tell us what they need. And so we got to be able to respond to that and be as flexible as we can and do that safely, but meet our customers' needs. And that's really what the journey that we're on resiliency-wise is I think is going to be a long journey ahead of us. There are some short-term things that we got to do for one, and I know you talked about this last time. You have to prioritize for your cities what's most critical, so that we can work on those lists together and then figure out, what we can do, to get you where you need to be. So that prioritized list of assets of your own is step number one to really beginning this conversation in earnest.
So as products become more available just because technology is advancing, there are, whether you're a commercial facility, mid-size or small or residential, as I was talking about, you can buy these off the shelf now.
Correct.
Lowe's, Costco, Home Depot, any of these big box retailers are selling natural gas powered generators. So in theory, and I just want to make sure that our partners understand, if you're willing to be part of a demand response system, we might be able to incentivize a program for one of those installs.
Right. We've got our Flex Step RFP process that we're going through right now that's going to look at the next iteration for hopefully the next 10 years of programs. We've got the energy efficiency and demand response programs that really we know what those look like, and we've got what we call our tried and true RFP section, and then we've got the innovative program section that will include resiliency and a lot of other products that the market has brought to us that we're working through right now. So the Flex Step initiative will absolutely look at the full range of programs that our customers might be interested in, so that we can keep evolving as a utility to provide the opportunities that you want from us.
So Angela, you mentioned there's a difference in emissions from diesel to natural gas, especially, you know, the newer models have gotten better. I'd imagine that if you're in a, if you are considering yourself as a critical piece of infrastructure, or your facility, your business, or your home, I'd imagine that natural gas is probably a better fit for start-stop, and you eliminate the storage necessity. But diesel stored over a long period of time, if you're not testing it, starts to degrade, correct?
That's true as well. But yeah, so natural gas will have your lowest, especially NOx emissions, which we really, being an ozone non-attainment, that is one of the critical things you have to think about.
I think this is going to be for Luther.
Hey, Adrian, I think we need a mute. Go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
But I was gonna, it really is site-specific and what you need it for. And so I will say nothing is perfect. You know, you're either gonna, do you want that storage supply there, or do you want lower emissions? You kind of have to balance out what you need. It's similar to how we make power here at CPS Energy. There's nothing that's perfect. Solar and wind, you still need a backup source for reliability. Coal and natural gas, you have the emissions, but they're usually there, you know, when you when you need to call on them. So it's really, I think you really need to look at your specific application, how many hours you think you're going to need it in a year, and decide what works best for you. But again, natural gas from a NOx perspective and ozone non-attainment, it is the best for direct NOx emissions.
Thank you. Making sure we have any questions online or here in the group. Al, tell us about the biggest challenges in a retrofit that you've experienced, so that our partners are aware of what they need to start thinking about. Microphone.
I guess on the residential, the National Electric Code 2020 came up with a new standard where you've got to have surge suppression at every home now. And there's a lot of homes that don't have it. But also, if you're going to have, for the home of the future, I think they need to put a black box or some distance between the meter and the main service panel outside your house to allow a future electrician to interrupt that and put an AB switch there, put an automatic transfer switch there, be it an automatic one or one that you have to manually go out and switch for the home. For the commercial or business, I went through a lot of plans that I've got, and I brought out some excerpts on that, and you have to just go in there and what do you want to protect? Do you want to protect the whole building, everything from the service on in, or do you just want to protect the main accounting area, or wherever you have your computer in the building? You just want to protect just that circuit. So you may have to have an engineer, an engineer come in and redesign your existing electrical system, and have electricians come in and just rewire stuff that needs to be done. For the typical home, for an already built home, you've got to take care of the whole house because of the fact that otherwise you got to have your home rewired to have one emergency panel and have your refrigerators and your routers or your large screen TV and everything else that you deem important there.
And that transcends commercial as well, correct?
Yes, yes. That there are priorities that need to be, critical loads that need to be identified. In a wastewater system or water systems that I've been involved with, they do have a generator, and then they also have another automatic transfer switch where in case that generator fails, they've got a manual plug that they can go in there and bring in a rented generator to temporarily power up. Also, inside their control cabinets, they'll usually have a small UPS that monitors the computer that runs the whole water plant. They'll usually have one if it's a very large water plant like the desalination plant, Down in South, they'll have multiple UPSs, but those UPSs are also backed up by a generator or multiple generators at that time.
No, I was going to say, if you want to continue.
On the retrofitting, that's probably going to be the most difficult, but if it's something that has to be done, for the cities, y'all going to have to determine what are those critical loads that you need. Can they be subdivided? If they can, then how much runtime do you need if you're using a battery backup? And batteries that's going to be the large cost of the unit. To do a typical UPS with 8-minute runtime, let's say 100 kVA, which would be about 480 volt at 225 amps worth of power that you need to distribute. You're looking at about $58,000, and that would be the contractor cost. And that's just for 8 minutes worth of runtime. Now, you still need the design, the installation, and then are you going to back that up with another diesel or gas generator? That's above and beyond.
But pricing ultimately on the turnkey project is dependent on right-sizing the system.
Absolutely.
Dispatch,
Absolutely.
fire and police,
Yes.
water system, your water pumps, your sewer lift stations, fire stations, critical infrastructure, whatever they deem is inside that building. And then, worst thing, payroll Friday. If you're running payroll, you don't want to lose those records either.
Oh, yeah, but you don't have to pay them on Friday.
Next Friday.
The fire stations that I've done and the police stations that I've done, radios are real critical. And for the fire stations, also, the doors are real critical. You've got to be, if it's closed, you've got to be able to open it, otherwise, big problems. And those are the, usually the justification for the generators to be there as well. They can take the small bump, but not the radio systems. Some motors can take a small bump, can be, if a motor, garage door opener, or even in the wastewater system, some of the pumps, they can take a small bump, but others, no, you can't. You've got to have continuous power, or the whole system will probably shut down and wait for somebody to go out there and manually reset it. And by that time they do that, in a bad weather situation, how long could that be?
Thank you. We have a question. Sir.
Yeah, for Universal City, most of our city facilities, well sites and everything, we have generators, diesel generators at all those locations. And the biggest thing about these generators is having maintenance scheduled with them, which we have service contracts with our current Caterpillar generators that we have. And the biggest thing is having them go through load test. And we do that, perform that on a weekly basis and stuff like that. But the periodic maintenance schedules that we have is to have them come through and maintain these diesel generators. And I was just looking at my list of different tests that we do. They go through different PM levels on a annual basis and stuff like that. So I think it's important that everybody knows that when they get these generators, they have a thorough maintenance contract on all these generators.
Every Monday, is that correct?
Depends. Court is on Wednesday, so we got to do it on a different day. Because when it does transfer, when it goes from electricity to diesel, we do have to, don't want to interrupt that service.
At your largest generator, it's diesel. What's your storage capacity there?
Most of my current facilities, we got 500,000 gallons worth of these generators. Probably my biggest one is at Public Works, which is we got a little over 1 million gallons at that particular site there. So.
And so that takes up space as well.
It does, and also, when we do these, working with CPS in the past to get these generators at these locations, obviously we worked with CPS and setting in, going from overhead to underground, and which comes in the transformers that come in with containment and stuff. So it's a process to get the design in and get set up those those costs associated with setting up these generators as well.
But you mean storage for water, you meant storage for diesel.
Yeah, if you have
Oh,
that many
diesels.
gallons of storage
Yeah.
on site.
Yeah, they range from, depends on the size of the generator we have at each one. They range from 500 gallons to over 1,500 gallons in these tanks. So, and we'll keep them. We don't top them all off. When the event came in February that we had, we did top them all off, and they were vital to us during that storm, as we all know.
Rudy, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to say that, we've got UPSs and, backup generation and critical facilities of our own, and you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, you've got to exercise them and maintain them at the right frequencies to ensure that they're there when you need them. I've got, obviously I've been in this business a long time. I've got a lot of friends who are electricians and do work, in the community for customers directly. And I've told them, if you're not setting up a resiliency section to go out and start talking to customers about, products that they're going to be interested in investing in, you're going to miss the boat, because I think, this space is just really kind of getting going. And so, as Al said, the contractor finding the right partner to make sure that whatever system you invest in, not only works when you need it to, but also, if it's not there, it can create, it can burn up motors and things that are going to cost you more money, on the infrastructure you've already invested in. So protecting that infrastructure, in the event of, of a malfunction or something of that nature, not only, is it going to cost you to put in the resiliency infrastructure, it may cost you to replace infrastructure you already have because it didn't work right. So I appreciate that point, because it's a really important one. There are instances where folks thought they were protected and they weren't. I mean, we're having conversations with our own board about how much gas storage we have, physical hedging we're doing, and is 3 days the right number or is 10 days the right number? So, so figuring out how much fuel you're going to need to make it through whatever, level of event, you're planning towards is going to have to be part of the conversations we have together.
Scott.
So I guess what I'm hearing, though, is there's certain types of generators. You said that they need to be a non-emergency type of generator. Now, but yours are just emergency generators. So if cities can use that ARPA money to purchase generators, we should probably purchase the kind that can also feed back into the system, and then whatever interface that we need where you can flip that switch around so we can help out with critical loads.
Yeah. Those are the type of models we're talking about. We're starting to categorize those. Those would be more, for energy that's available to be put back on the grid. There's a monetary opportunity there when the prices, get to a certain point where it makes sense. And so, that's why working with, we have one specifically, but there are other vendors out there that have similar products that I think we're gonna put out a big RFP to really, identify all the opportunity that's available out there, because yes, I mean, every little bit in an emergency absolutely matters.
As I give my panelists an opportunity to think of their closing comments, I'll look toward Paula to start coming up to the front for closing comments. So I'll start with Al. No pressure, Al.
Well, thank you for considering that, but the only thing I will ask the different communities to do is to hire a local engineer. There's so many jobs that I see for school districts, and they'll bring in an engineer out of Dallas or out of Louisiana, and I go up to the school district trustees and say, what are you doing? You've got the talent here, you've got the engineering talent, and you've got the installers here. Hire a local. Thank you.
Angela?
Sure. I'll just say that really I'm glad we're having these conversations, because as weather storms do get angrier, being prepared and more resilient is very important to the community and in all of your cities. And as you look at these, because there are a lot of choices of generators or like non-emergency versus emergency, it's important to, if you have a like an air permitting consultant or someone who you can talk you through the process, just to make sure you're choosing what's right based on how flexible you want that runtime to be.
And Rudy?
Well, I just think this is a reflection of how our industry is changing. You know, we've been so used to the utility company building the big power plants and pushing power one direction through the line, and you know, this distributed model, I think, is certainly going to be a, you know, not just a fad, you know, because we've had a bad storm. I think customers want more control. I think customers want more input. I think they're going to have their own opinions about how to protect their infrastructure. And so our ability to evolve, still do the job you expect us to do, be reliable, be affordable, you know, offer you service in the way that meets your needs is always going to be our focus as your hometown utility. But, you know, being able to meet you where you are as a customer is going to be really important going forward. And, you know, as you know, the person responsible for products and services here at CPS Energy, that's the way we're thinking about the future is, you know, how can we be as diverse and creative and forward-thinking as we can, but still be the utility that's reliable that you expect of us. And that's what we're shooting for. And it's going to take these conversations and continued partnership with you as our customers and as our you know, suburban cities to work together to get where we need to go on this. So I just really appreciate the dialogue, and you know, I look forward to working with you on these issues.
One final check on online questions in the chat. Any questions from our audience? Yes, sir. One more.
On the partnerships on these generators, we're talking about any partnership that can work with CPS as far as going gateway, right? So we're going to invest in future generators with the city to where, say, we look at gas generation, to where basically it's designed to where it fits our needs for emergencies, but as well feedback into the system. Is there a partnership in that?
Well, yeah, that is the construct that we have worked out currently with the one partner that we've got contracts with, EROC. So there is a model that, you know, that I think works to do it that way, and so I think we're going to continue to pursue those type of opportunities. So yeah, I think that's an opportunity.
I think everything's on the table, but knowing that what Angela mentioned is that we're in non-attainment as Bexar County, how do we balance that out in those critical times with regard? We don't want to lose our emission status. We don't want to take a big step back. So I think it's a balance, but I think we're listening to everything that's out there.
Yeah.
Mark.
Rudy, you mentioned that you talked about a residential example.
Dr. Brown, would you mind repeating that question?
Yeah, so Rudy, you said you were talking about a residential system that it costs $20,000. That's not reasonable for the average homeowner. I mean, is that a normal cost? I mean, I thought you could do it for, you know, maybe $1,000 to $2,000.
No, I mean, going out and buying a generator at Lowe's is the cheapest way to do it. You can get that for $1,000, $1,500, and you know, do it manually. And you know, this was a system where they wired it in. It's an automatic switch. That's the Cadillac of systems. You know, I threw that out there just as an example of the type of systems that I know are available, depending upon, you know, your capacity, you know, to invest in it. But yes, there are much simpler, you know, forms of generation that don't cost nearly as much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any final questions? I certainly thank the panel for, oh, Al, please.
Sir, regarding attainment, and Ms. Rodriguez, on air attainment, if the utility partners with a commercial entity or another municipality, does that attainment fall on CPS? I mean, does it all group, is it geographical, or is it one entity providing attainment, or is it better that they stand alone?
Yeah, well, for compliance purposes and air emissions, the ultimately responsible party is the owner or operator of the generator. But attainment overall for our Bexar County is really a combined initiative, but on an individual emission basis, it is the owner.
Okay, so the municipality that buys a generator or the company that buys a generator could throw the city off?
Yes, depending on, the way ozone is formed is when VOCs and NOx react with sunlight. So it could be, if it's, say it's a really hot day and everyone's running their diesel generators at the same time, and there's a lot of NOx in the air, you could potentially impact the ozone numbers. But if it's, say if it's a really rainy storm and people are using their diesel generators and there's no sunlight to react, then it wouldn't be a big impact. So it really depends a lot on what time of day you're operating those generators.
Okay, so it's something way above my pay grade.
Another question from the audience.
I have a question for CPS. On the, during this last storm event, the reliability of natural gas, because we've got some natural gas motors that mechanically with splines run our pumps for our wells. And so we're going to invest in another one. It performed well for us, but you know, we always talk about electricity because most people are impacted, but how safe is the natural gas supply, and did we learn anything during this last event that might have raised some concerns?
Tag team on that.
Yeah, and I'm sure Paul will be happy to cover this in more detail during her closing remarks. Overall, our natural gas distribution system, performed excellent. We did have some issues with supply. At the state level, the wellheads froze, and the ability to distribute gas. We didn't get all the gas that we ordered for our power plants, and so some of our power plants were impacted. But we were able to maintain pressures in our gas distribution system accordingly. A lot of the conversations we're having at the state level are focused on how do we ensure that in the state of Texas, the oil and gas industry has got to be able to to get us what we need. That's our bread and butter here in the state, and so there's some work to do to ensure that the supply chain for both natural gas systems, and their importance to the electric systems. It's the same as natural gas to electric, electric to water. It's all interconnected, and so the nexus of how we protect these systems is a huge focus right now. We're proud of the fact that we're able to continue to keep up the pressure during the storm of our natural gas system, but our power plants were impacted. So we've got some work to do there.
So Rudy, it'll be about the rulemaking that comes forth after the legislature passed some grid optimization type of rules on how from the wellhead to the compressor station to another compressor station to the generator, how those are weatherized and what those standards will be. And so we're going to take part in that.
The governor's signing that Weatherization Bill, SB 3 today, which includes weatherization standards for both the power industry and the natural gas industry. And those will go through rulemakings at the Railroad Commission, at the Public Utility Commission. But certainly, the need to protect those systems was one of the issues that was addressed this legislative session.
Thank you. I'll ask the panelists to stay. Paula, your closing comments.
Thank you. Oh, you want us to stay? Well, okay.
You ready to run?
I'm ready for you to take a seat, ma'am.
Very good. All right. Thank you all for coming. I am inspired by your presence here today and your thoughtful questions and thinking about, the customers and citizens in your area. I hate to kind of visualize this, but unfortunately, there is nothing that is easy. You all deal with so many complexities with your citizens and the interests that they have, and you're thinking about what might it look like for an individual resident versus what you're trying to do to keep your communities going. And unfortunately, none of that's going to be easy. I was always impressed with Al, but I'm even more super impressed because a lot of things are not above his pay grade. So thank you for contributing to some of this. And I would say that even for me, a lot of times it's just overwhelming to try to figure out what to do. And I think we in the industry tend to kind of jargon it up and use numbers and letters and acronyms and all the things that are complex. But what I would say is we're here to be helpful, and what we're, again, providing is consultation, and we're not charging for that. So I think being here today to think about it from a conceptual standpoint is important, but as you start to venture into your own landscapes and are thinking about what do you want to do and review some of the information that you got today and start thinking about it practically about, when you start thinking about size of systems and the flow of natural gas and the distribution system and what are the risks associated with that, I really believe that each one of you could have your own tailored basic plans that we can help look them over with you. We won't have all the expertise that you need, but I think we'll have a critical part of the expertise because we'll be able to think about what you're trying to do in balance with what's really happening across the entire system. And what we really found during the entire event is we had to think about it in terms of like a ecosystem. And really, again, get down to those really specific projects of where you're trying to head and make them happen. I'm not an expert on the backup systems. I've looked into these some. Look, I think the other thing, as an example, maybe you can get a cheaper system if you're a resident, but you may not have much duration. And I think resiliency and duration are going to be the real challenges. In other words, typically they're valuing what you need, which is the longer you can have the backup generation, kind of the more expensive it's going to be, the bigger the system is. When you do have customers that want very sophisticated integrated systems, I will also tell you, I've looked into this, the journey of that is not easy. You've got to get permits and surveys and inspections and all these things. And for anyone who's still, if you're not retired and you're still working, you're going to have to take some time off to make sure that people come to your house or to your city, to make sure that a lot of things happen. And I think we can be helpful with some of that and help you with checklists and, again, inputs and to think about the ramifications across what we consider are the 6 pillars. And Angela, by far, gave you some really good feedback about the environmental issues. And that's a community solution set. I think you're going to have to think about what your emissions look like in your area, but it's so complex that every time we try to fix something, we have an unintended consequence of something else. So as we try to fix reliability and resilience, I think her cautions are wise that as a community in trying to fix that, we might increase our emissions levels if we are not careful. And then also to Al's point, everybody wants to do batteries because it's non-emitting, but the duration, again, can be a complexity, or the size of a system, or to build redundancy in your system can be very, very expensive. So all that to say is it's not insurmountable. You got to start somewhere, and some of you have already started. I think, again, if we think about each one of your communities and see what you think is the best place for you to start, and I would imagine they might all be in different places, we can look at that inventory and prioritize and just work with you to kind of go through all of these opportunities. Now, I guess the last thing, again, I'll say is we all get that it's expensive. And I think the comment made earlier by John, or the question directed to him about, are there funds? There aren't the funds available that would take to make everything in San Antonio resilient. We don't have that. But we are trying to find some pilots and some things to focus on and some things where we can talk about, community-wide and try to carve out some of those funds. And we know that it's important to do, and so we're going to do the best we can, but we right now don't have a pocket of money. We're just going to end up trying to prioritize to be as helpful to you and the rest of the community as possible. I think I will just generally say it is about partnership, and it is about filling in the gaps. You will definitely fill in the gaps with us about what your specific needs are and what you're trying to do. And we will, again, keep in mind the entire San Antonio landscape. So we harm no one and we help everyone. That will be our goal. So I thank you. It was I missed part of it, but I knew what the agenda was involved. I'm getting so many other things I got to do. But this is actually one of the things I'm passionate about. This, I think, is the fun stuff. This is where you really come out and come up with resolution and solutions for results. And this is what's going to protect our citizens. So you have a friend in CPS Energy. John and his team are committed to make sure that we are on the spot when you need us. and just let us know how we can be helpful. Any questions for me? Okay, you made it easy.
Paula, I want to say thank you. With her closing comments, I'd like to offer possible next steps. If it's talking about business continuity plans or resiliency plans for your cities and your communities, let's talk about that. Also, too, our supply chain group is ready and available to have a discussion about how to offer key language for any bundled RFP type of service, whether it be UPS systems, other generators, multiple fuel generators, whatever it might be. So we'll send out another survey, poll the group, and bring you back another seminar. Hopefully they're being useful. We've got a long way to go. Hurricane season will be upon us soon. I mentioned I grew up on the coast, and it is something that we all have to be aware of here in San Antonio as storms make their way inland. I want to thank you. This concludes our second part of our seminar series on resiliency, and I thank you so much for joining us.